President of the Republic of the Philippines.
Admit Her Excellency.
Again, that's the Speaker of the House and the President pro tem of the Senate. And here we see Mrs. Aquino. She's accompanied by the Majority Leader of the House of Representatives, Jim Wright of Texas, who is likely to be the next Speaker. And other congressional leaders. There's Senator Robert Dole right behind her. He's the Majority Leader of the Senate, and on his right is the Minority Leader, the Democratic Leader, Robert Byrd of West Virginia. And you can hear the sustained and very enthusiastic applause. This is much more than the usual reaction that a leader would get coming into the chamber.
For many of them, I think it's the first time they're going to see Mrs. Aquino in person.
No question, for the vast majority of them. And that is a real show of emotion that you can see out there. And that's coming across the board, Democrats and Republicans, liberals and conservatives. You can almost feel it. Now the Speaker will formally introduce her, and then we'll get another round of applause.
That's quite a long round of applause for President Aquino.
Oh, I think it's very, very important to stress that. I've seen a number of these where we've had foreign leaders come before the Congress, and you'll get applause. It's nice. It's appropriate
and cordial.
But it's cordial. This is something far more than that, and it's meant to be a signal.
Members will be seated. Members of the Congress, it is my great privilege, and I deem it a high honor and personal privilege, to present to you Her Excellency Corazon C. Aquino, President of the Republic of the Philippines.
Mr. Speaker, Senator Thurmond, distinguished members of Congress. 3 years ago, I left America in grief to bury my husband, Ninoy Aquino. I thought I had left it also to lay to rest his restless dream of Philippine freedom. Today, I have returned as the President of a free people. In burying Ninoy, a whole nation honored him by that brave and selfless act of giving honor. A nation in shame recovered its own. A country that had lost faith in its future found it in a faithless and brazen act of murder. So in giving we receive, in losing we find, and out of defeat we snatched our victory. For the nation, Ninoy became the pleasing sacrifice that answer their prayers for freedom. For myself and our children, Ninoy was a loving husband and father. His loss, 3 times in our lives, was always a deep and painful one. 14 years ago this month was the first time we lost him. a president turned dictator and traitor to his oath, suspended the Constitution and shut down the Congress that was much like this one, before which I am honored to speak. He detained my husband along with thousands of others, senators, publishers, and anyone who had spoken up for the democracy as its end drew near. But for Ninoy, a long and cruel ordeal was reserved. The dictator already knew that Ninoy was not a body merely to be imprisoned, but a spirit he must break. For even as the dictatorship demolished one by one the institutions of democracy, the press, the Congress, the independence of the judiciary, the protection of the Bill of Rights, Ninoy kept their spirit alive in himself. The government sought to break him by indignities and terror. They locked him up in a tiny, nearly airless cell in a military camp in the north. They stripped him naked and held the threat of a sudden midnight execution over his head. Ninoy held up manfully under all of it. I barely did as well. For 43 days, the authorities would not tell me what had happened to him. This was the first time my children and I felt we had lost him. When that didn't work, they put him on trial for subversion, murder, and a host of other crimes before a military commission. Ninoy challenged its authority and went on a fast. If he survived it, then he felt God intended him for another fate. We had lost him again, for nothing would hold him back from his determination to see his fast through to the end. He stopped only when it dawned on him that the government would keep his body alive after the fast had destroyed his brain. And so, with barely any life in his body, he called off the fast on the 40th day. God meant him for other things, he felt. He did not know that an early death would still be his fate, that only the timing was wrong. At any time during his long ordeal, Ninoy could have made a separate peace with the dictatorship, as so many of his countrymen had done. But the spirit of democracy that inheres in our race and animates this chamber could not be allowed to die. He held out in the loneliness of his cell and the frustration of exile, the democratic alternative to the insatiable greed and mindless cruelty of the right and the purging holocaust of the left. And then we lost him irrevocably and more painfully than in the past. The news came to us in Boston. It had to be after the 3 happiest years of our lives together. But his death was my country's resurrection in the courage and faith by which alone they could be free again. The dictator had called him a nobody, yet 2 million people threw aside their passivity and fear and escorted him to his grave. And so began the revolution that has brought me to democracy's most famous home, the Congress of the United States. The task had fallen on my shoulders to continue offering the democratic alternative to our people. Archibald MacLeish had said that democracy must be defended by arms when it is attacked by arms, and by truth when it is attacked by lies. He failed to say how it shall be won.